have been used to bring logical consistency, factual accuracy, and emotional appeal to relevant topics. And while debates have been around since ancient times, today's motion has never been more timely. For many internal communications departments, the internet has been the marquee solution for communication and collaboration for years. However, over those years, there have been numerous technologies that have questioned the longevity of the internet as the number one solution for internal comms. So, is it curtain call for the internet? Let's see what our experts have to say. First, joining us today is Richard Harbridge, 7-time Microsoft MVP and CTO at Tutelite. Richard, how's it
Hey,
going?
everyone. That's very good.
Amazing. So really quickly, you've worked on over 100 intranets. So a lot of people might be wondering why you're for the motion the intranet is dying. Can you elaborate a little bit?
Yeah, I'll definitely expand on it in my statements. But at the end of the day, I find that my immediate reaction when I hear the internet's dead or dying is defensive. It's one of, not really listening to the other side. And I think in the recent past, what I've started to realize is that a number of things, and that it's better to listen to the other side and make sure you hear the other side's opinions, perspectives. And I love the debate format for that because, it's a way for us to do it in a civil way, where we're not talking about facetious things. We're talking about things that have a reality and have major impacts. So I hope, just like for myself, it's been a really useful journey learning more about that other side of the perspective. Is the internet really the right center of the digital workplace? And we'll talk more about that. But if at the end of it you have learned something from it, then I think mission successful on my end, representing multiple perspectives from the industry.
Amazing. Thank you for that, Richard, and more from Richard shortly. Now, moving on to the individual going against the motion, we have Brandon Pittman, a Nielsen Norman Award winner and digital workplace strategist at Tutelite. Brandon, how are you?
I'm great. Thank you for having me.
Amazing. Well, obviously, you've won awards for Intranet, so we know why you're against. But why is debating the motion so important to you?
Well, it's something that I do every day, and I've experienced so many customers over the years that use this as their lifeblood to ensure their business is not only profitable, their culture is healthy and ongoing. But after we've seen COVID, it's the way to make sure that we're all aligned, that we're a part of something perhaps bigger or greater than the sum of the whole. It makes me wake up every day. I eat internets for breakfast, so I'm not going to go down lightly without a fight, at least showing and substantiating why this is still so important and relevant today.
Perfect. And we look forward to that. So thank you very much for that, for the intro. So before we begin, if you're looking for more details on why we're debating the internet is dying, please take a look at our latest blog. And lastly, and most importantly, we want you to decide the winner. So the decision will be made based on who can sway the most votes. So please fill the form in the chat at the beginning of the debate and at the end of the debate in a second form. Maybe your opinion stays the same, maybe it changes. That's what we want to find out. And the winner will be announced next week based off the polls on social media and today's results. So stay tuned. And now, without further ado, let's begin with opening statements. Richard, the floor is yours.
Hi, everyone. So first, let me start with stating that intranets are not dead. We have lots of amazing, exceptional customers and people that I get to work with every day that work their entire day on intranets and do amazing work. The reality is that intranets as a place to go, as a destination portal, which is unfortunately or fortunately the way a lot of people reference the intranet as a tool, is it's that place to go to get the content, the apps, and the services we need, that is dying. That this framing needs to change, and that we're undergoing a very significant organizational, cultural, and importantly, technological change that enables a new way forward that doesn't have the intranet as the centerpiece. So why is the intranet dying? I'll make 3 statements today at the very beginning here to reference why. And essentially, by the end of my discussions today, I hope that you also vote with me that the intranet is dying and that it's being replaced by something better. So the first point I'll make is that the intranet historically has always been flawed in its core design. As an intranet, it's always been a place to go get the resources and apps and services that we need. But what people want is not to have to go to a place to do that. In fact, there's lots of other alternative solutions historically in the organization that have evolved in a similar way. If you take the mailroom, at one point, you'd have to go to the mailroom to get your mail. Then it shifted for us getting it delivered to us on kiosks and floors and things of that nature. And then that shifted again to a digital heart of the organization where file shares and other things, were, yes, centralized, but then our files came to us through email and other methods. The ones that worked the most from adoption and impact have almost always been ones where the content and services come to you where you are versus you having to go to it. So that's my first point, that I think fundamentally the idea of going to the intranet wasn't really the best idea in the first place. It's just what we had to do technologically. The second one is that it's unsustainable for that to continue to be the place we go. Right now, it's true that most organizations see a doubling of their business data and business documents and materials every 2 years. And so this used to be maybe doubling every 5 years. It's now at 2. So this is exponentially increasing. And the amount of data and information we have, especially since the pandemic, is accelerating. So it's really difficult to say, hey, we can centralize that from a navigation perspective and make it easy for people to go and consume all of that in one place. The third one, and probably the most important one, is that this is already happening. The intranet and its services and content have started to shift so that you consume them where you are and how you'd like. As an example, news, for the most part, for a lot of organizations and individuals, comes to their inbox. It comes to their mobile device. It comes to them inside of Microsoft Teams or the places they already work. And what's more, not only is it coming to us in these places that we work, but it's also being done in a way where that experience isn't sort of secondary. That experience is something that allows for reactions, that allows for commenting, that allows for the same level of fidelity that we'd get in the traditional go to the intranet model. Now, news is not alone here. There are lots of other examples of this. Search, which historically has been a thing you'd go to the intranet to do, has come more and more towards where we work. When I write an email and I click an app mention and I start to write an app mention, it suggests people that's a search experience. It's built in the context of where I'm working. And in fact, things like the editor and context IQ capabilities in Microsoft Experiences actually uses AI to predict and suggest who those people are, or what topics to reference, et cetera, based on the email thread, who you're messaging, and a number of other factors. So context makes search much more valuable. And when you bring search to the user, that creates a better experience. But even if you don't believe in that as the core principles, the reality is Microsoft Search is universal now in Windows 11, in the desktop, in Teams, and Outlook, and various applications that I use every day that I work and live in. Those all have this connected search experience, which again further emphasizes a push away or a pull away from the centralization of a single page or place of content to go to. And then the third one that I'd want to reference, and it's probably the most important, is navigation. So, most people, the number one purpose of using the intranet still is to navigate to other resources. Unfortunately, historically, this has been static, not very dynamic. And so what we have now is we have dynamic, personalized, intelligent navigation built into tools we have. And a perfect example of this is Viva Topics. Viva Topics allows for that integration. It's in Office, Teams, Outlook, even Pages, but the places we already work. It's got that table of contents, but it's dynamic by design, where you have both curated content and recommended content that's always up to date, of people, content, questions, answers, sites, communities, and more. And that allows for us to have the best of both worlds. We have all of that information available basically at our fingertips, but in the context of our work, so it makes sense for us, right? I'm looking up this term, I can see that term, I can navigate from there to a variety of places. Now, I'll continue to explain today through rebuttals and discussions why it's so important that we do look forward, and that the path forward is not to go to somewhere else to get the access and content we need. It's for that to come to us. The intranet is dying, and it's being replaced by something that's better, that maps better to the variety, volume, and velocity of collaboration and communication needs we have today. And I hope that you agree with me by the end of today and vote for the motion. The intranet is dying.
Amazing. Thank you, Richard. Now we'll hear from Brandon.
Thanks, Eddy. Right. So I don't think it's going to be a surprise, but I'm going to say that the internet is by no stretch of the imagination dead. It's actually the heartbeat of the organization, and it's actually often championed by the communications team to foster culture, improve employee experience and well-being, connection, and showcases subject matter expertise. There is no better hub for employees. But here's a few reasons why. So we're facing a new shift in the global workforce, with asynchronous and hybrid working models coming to the fore. Thus, business viability depends on tried, tested, and true modern intranets championed by the communication team, who, might I add, are the cornerstone of all things culture across the organization. But don't just take my word for it. The investments made by Microsoft in SharePoint Online, Viva Engage, and communities, which have been just integrated into the internet even more, if you had paid attention, and Viva Connections over the past few years is a clear indication of the platform's importance. And with the cloud, it's getting better every single day. What's more is that we must pay close attention to the very fact that adoption takes time, norms matter, and so do expectations. Furthermore, if our experiences during the pandemic have anything to show, we need communication, connectivity, and cohesion to effectively navigate and manage crisis. From what I've seen, the internet served thousands of organizations in acting as the source of truth for the vulnerable workforce that is dealing with the uncertain and ambiguous times of the last few years. But if you're still not sold, and given that I probably have 2 more minutes left to conclude, I can throw in a few more points for consideration. From a cost perspective, the cost involved, it means that the internet is one place that is easier to envision, design, build, and roll out in a matter of weeks if you're really prepared. That's a lot of cost savings in times than it used to be 10 years ago, let's just say. New employee center and gravity well that it serves as the epicenter of the organization still cannot be competed with. It's still a tried, tested, and true methodology. The cultural connection by default and its effectivity to allow someone to onboard into an organization has still been unparalleled. And trust me, going through the Great Resignation, you probably have quite a few new colleagues. In fact, if you're listening, you might be new yourself in the last 6 months. You have an understanding of who's who. It's an authority and people friendly, right? Connecting naturally and organically with people across the business. The internet is also a domain of knowledge and excellence. And there's increasing examples day in, day out by authorities such as Nielsen Norman Group themselves. Now, to be clear, all of the aforementioned is not to say the internets aren't great and shouldn't die. And to be honest, there's many poorly designed internets that I've seen. They're not employee focused, too noisy, poorly designed. Really, they should die. I'm not making a business case for that whatsoever. But my opponent, on the other hand, will likely deduce that there are many other applications through which to procure the same results, particularly across the Microsoft 365 stack. Of course, we're Microsoft consultants, aren't we? However, these alternatives are at best immature, siloed, fragmented, and simply not ready to dethrone the internet as the heartbeat of the organization. I'm going to repeat myself here because it's that important. These alternatives are at best immature, siloed, and fragmented, and simply not ready to dethrone the internet. The internet is tried, tested, and true. Vote against the motion if you believe the internet still matters as the hub, and that there isn't something better yet. We have not yet quite evolved to that level. Corporate communications matter. If this isn't centralized with leadership, etc., you should vote with me. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you, Brandon. Amazing opening statements on both ends. So now we'll open up to questions. Richard, the first question is for you. Brandon mentioned that the internet is the heart of the digital workplace, the center of culture. What do you have to say about that?
Yeah, I think I don't think it's really ever been the center of culture. Culture is kind of everywhere. It's in the experiences of an employee throughout the entire journey of an employee, and representing alignment in culture is pretty much the main emphasis of an intranet, right? And comms does have a part to play in that. Comms is a way to create that alignment, but it's not what drives it. As an example, you could take performance management, and that would have a bigger impact. If you asked a question like, "How have others helped you? How have you helped others?" In your performance reviews, quarterly, yearly, whenever that happens, that would be a good indicator that collaboration is important to your organization culturally, and that's an emphasis point. But if you didn't have that question, it would also be really telling, because it would tell you that there's a gap, again, representing your culture for performance, rewards, recognition, again, things that are a much better driver of cultural shift over time. I think another big one is, distributed is better in most of these models. So imagine for a moment, I took my profile picture of my face inside of Microsoft 365. You can actually have sort of an image over top of it, an overlay of it. And when you do something like that with this sort of visual flair, if I had something like an award there, and I had that for, say, a month or so, right after I received that award, everyone who interacts with me, whether it's by email, whether it's in Teams, et cetera, would go, oh, he's won that award. Let me ask him about that. Let me congratulate him about that. And that would make that much more meaningful, especially if that award, recognizes a cultural, shift, right? Moving towards more collaboration or other types of cultures that we're trying to drive. And similar to that, if we have, the recognition and these types of things follow our profiles, that tends to lead to more success. So again, I totally agree. Like, it's competitive talent market right now. And even if it wasn't, it's super important to emphasize and support culture with our digital tools. I do think, again, comms and even, messaging in the internet might have a part to play in that, but it's a very small part where, the collaboration journeys, the experiences that we do from a performance management experiences, and much more. I think those things drive, the overall culture.
Amazing. Brandon, really quickly, how would you rebuttal that?
I would say that absolutely. That's a really good point. Culture isn't just the internet, it's the collective experience of the whole. But what better way to emphasize and accelerate that than through the portal, right? I could have colleagues down in Brazil and I do not get the chance to interface with them every day or see the events that they've had or the offsites that they've collected with one another, or a newborn child for that matter. There's a way to be able to amplify that kind of news, and that's just the medium the internet provides. Whether or not it's taken advantage of, that remains to be seen, but it is still possible, and I've seen many, many, many effective examples from organizations over 100,000 people down to organizations that are just 75 large. Of course, the culture will depend upon the region, the type of industry you're in, so on and so forth, but it's just more than amplifying bits and pieces here and there. We also want to have something easier, simple to digest, not another system to inundate us on our day-to-day. Sometimes we just want to pick up the newspaper and go, I know how many sections are here. I know exactly where to go that information, instead of having to pick and choose every day when I come into the office.
Great answer and great rebuttal on both parts. Now let's move on to the next question. This one is for you, Brandon. Is the internet truly the best place for new employee centers and experiences?
Well, I would rebuttal and say, well, why not? Right? Of course, intranets are, and if we don't forget, the molecules of an intranet is sites, multiple sites, at least in the modern sense. If you're thinking of classic, you have subsites or pages. It doesn't matter the organization, but I think now more than ever, the investment into onboarding employees, allowing for self teaching or introduction to the culture, this is the way to do it, right? And what a better way to introduce them, even from a pre-boarding perspective, is creating that internet so you can help guide their experience more through the internet phase, right? Everyone's been new to an organization, and the first week, if not the first month, is overwhelming, information overload, especially when you're in a knowledge organization. So by creating this site and curating content, perhaps by audience targeting, by ensuring that your managers have approvals to see that you've gone through the policy procedures on your own pace, especially when this is during asynchronous work or a hybrid work model, depending upon your organization, it doesn't have to be so monotonous. It can actually be fun and engaging with multimedia perspectives. A note from your CEO in a video format, so you get to see someone face to face. That's pretty awesome. And I think that although there are alternatives, right? We might have Microsoft Teams that can do this. We could even have an Excel document. I'm not kidding. I actually saw an internet based upon an Excel document before. But that's like, it's would be lost on an organization to not take advantage of this. as it is right now. There are so many tools to weave in, not just out of the box features, but pulling in, our HRIS system in general, knowing when the employee is about to begin, triggering some event saying, hey, this is their first week. Maybe a manager should check in. Oh, maybe we should send them a welcome basket, right? It's not just for the employee, but it's for management to also be able to be more effective. Also, let's not forget, more human, right? Who doesn't want that these days? It's a hard balance to strike, and this is exactly the tool that enables that.
Once again, great answer. Richard, the floor is yours to provide a rebuttal.
Yeah, I agree. Automation, figuring out when to send gift baskets, managers giving feedback, none of those are intranet patterns, right? I'm not disagreeing that, onboarding sites might be relevant. My favorite onboarding site is a pre-boarding site. I think that's really important. But at the end of the day, where's the actual onboarding experience happen, right? It happens outside of the intranet. The intranet is just a representation of where we put our content that supports onboarding experiences. And so in that way, it's just storage, right? It's not necessarily where people go. And let me give some examples of that, right? So I mentioned the flare, right? Here's my picture and I've got my flare. If it says new employee in the bottom right-hand corner, that's a great experience for new employees because everyone's been there, where you have that student driver on the road, you see student driver, you're like, oh, let me, give that person space, or let me, say hi or something, say something positive to give them confidence. If you have that in every meeting you're going to, right, for the first few months, that's a really great onboarding experience, culturally, employee experience wise as well. And automation bots that come to you and say, hey, how you doing? Here's like 2 different ways. If you need support, here's a person to reach out to. Automation where you do peer boarding, where you assign a peer mentor or peer connection, and you do that, through automation. Those peer discussions, peer connects, manager meetings, all those things are happening in Teams and other places, not in the intranet. And finally, like checklists, right? Shouldn't be me going to go do a checklist. It should just be embedded in where I'm working. And so when I complete different motions and things like that, some of those checklist items are automatically tracked, and some are there and visible in the places I work, which is Outlook and Teams, right? Not in the browser all the time. So I think, I don't disagree that sites have a role to play in this, but I do disagree that the intranet is at the forefront for employee onboarding experiences. And I, again, think that the intranet shouldn't be a place to go. Whatever is from the intranet, meaning these sites that support onboarding, that should come to me where I am in the context of my work. So yeah, that's my quick thoughts on that one.
I love it. I love it. Things are getting heated. So let's not slow things down. Let's keep it rolling. Richard, next question is for you. From a technology investment standpoint, Brandon made a case for the internet being easier to predict, manage, and deliver. What's your thoughts on that?
First, I think facts, okay? The internet spending is down. If we look across the board, right, the amount it takes to buy and build an intranet is much, much lower than it used to be by a significant margin. An intranet takes a fraction of what it took from a time perspective to implement. The intranet number of vendors, like vendors that build intranet solutions, has decreased. The reality is the intranet isn't as significant an area of employee experience investment as it has been in the past. I do believe that is factually accurate. Why is that? Now, you could argue that that's probably because Microsoft and others have moved up the value chain and they provided a good enough experience for many customers. It enables them to get going quickly, and that most of the core capabilities of an intranet are there and ready for you to use if you use SharePoint Online or these capabilities. So the question then is, where are people investing those dollars? If they're not doubling down on the intranet, where are they putting that money? And that's on distributed communication, integration, or connected experiences. It's not that you build an experience and invest further into, let's bring people to the intranet. That is absolutely the wrong way to think about it. Where you see the investment today is, how do we bring the intranet and the value it provides to people where they are? How do we improve the employee experience, the digital employee experience, in meaningful ways? And that might be, as an example, creating something like Company Communicator that uses Microsoft Teams to push key messaging to people in channels and in IM messages to people where they are. It could be things like further investing in something like Viva Engage or communities, social platforms, again, typically alongside the intranet, but not in the core intranet experience. And again, those social platforms are more and more being consumed by places like Teams. Viva Engage literally is a Teams experience first and foremost, where I go and, am able to share my voice and do things like that. So I think, there's a lot of other areas, Viva Goals, Viva, like pretty much anything Viva is generally a better investment to move forward with, Viva Topics, which I've already talked about, than investing those dollars on, furthering the intranet, unless you're furthering the intranet in a way that moves away from it as a place to go and moves closer and closer to connecting and integrating it throughout the employee experience. So ROI is absolutely the case. And I think in this particular instance, it's on my end of the debate that, the intranet is not the best place for that investment.
Excellent. Brandon, the floor is yours.
Well, I'm glad you brought up Viva Connections. I mean, Viva in general, because Viva Connections is exactly what the next stage of the internet is. Microsoft noted, hey, this is not going anywhere. We want to bring it to where people work. So let's integrate it with the collaboration space. And let's empower you to put the internet front and center, like I often recognize and recommend to our customers. Let's put Viva Connections at the top in your app drawer, because guess what? You only get 6. And every single time I'm able to articulate and recommend this with absolute certainty. People love this. I have now my collaboration spaces and my communication spaces in one area. But that doesn't change that it's an intranet. It is an intranet. Again, it is an intranet. People are investing in Viva because it's new, it's fun, and it's actually quite effective. But we're not forgetting the intranet. It's still there. It is the pinnacle of that communication space. To speak to other areas of communication, right? We're going to talk about Company Communicator. Great tool, great tool. If I want to send a message to a certain group of individuals, I can fire that off if it's been prepped and it's done correctly and my governance is set up, and it's great. But it is micro communication. And you know what? I know a lot of customers that would love to be able to facilitate this, but they just do not have the capacity. But also, you have so many plates that you need a designated individual within communications to be able to trigger this on a regular basis, right? It is there, it is maturing, and I think that tool will really benefit a lot of customers. But let's not lose sight of micro communication or pulse checks, as Amazon loves to do it in their pulse surveys daily, to communication mediums, right? I'm letting everybody know. Let's not forget the audience that the internet is for everybody, where everything else that's being suggested today is siloing. I do not think the world needs more siloing. I think we need more transparency and openness and better experience overall. So yes, Richard's right. We fuse the two together, or at least we're going towards where we work, but the internet's just following along. It's doing just fine on its own.
Great distinctions there, Brandon. Really appreciated those points. And now I want to move to something that you slightly touched on previously in your opening statement, but I wanted to go a little bit further on it. You highlighted good design and bad design. So what makes that necessarily relevant to the discussion and the debate today? Or how does that impact?
Yeah, that's a really great question. Now, of course, the word good or bad is, of course, subjective, but we can say poorly designed because we are looking at the employee, the experience of the individual. If I struggle to find a repository of information which is there, but it takes me 20 minutes to find it, well, that's not a good design, right? We want to enable our employees to find what they need with as little effort and as much efficiency as possible. So if you have an internet that has 20 clicks to get to something, or the fonts are misaligned, or it's not even accessible for those who have varying needs within the business, then yes, it's poorly designed, right? That has to be at the forefront. So having an intranet for the namesake of it and slapping up a site, cool, you have an intranet, but it's not effective. So actually a wasted investment on your part, right? Just like employees demanding to have a collaboration space or stuff be delivered to where they are, the same expectation has been placed on the internet, and it's been that way for quite some time. Just technology is enabling us to do this in much different ways, utilizing different UI patterns. Plus, with a younger generation who are now fully digitally native, that expectation is just not a nice to have, it's a must have. So people have been known to effectively quit if their tools and systems are not in place as they should, causing frustration on a daily basis. So speaking to what is a good intranet, you've got to factor in the following. Communicate out to your employees. Ensure that they can communicate back into you. This is called two-way communication. This enables a very casual and approachable kind of culture. You want to make sure that you know who people are. So if you are not a part of a specific team, which collaboration sites only enforces, if you do not have permission to go to a certain site, you won't know it's there, right? So here you can explore freely on your own time, see the broader organization and take part. Other ones are communities and areas of interest which have nothing to do with your job spec. People, perhaps back in the day, used to raise their hand and say, not my job. Well, now I'm spending 8+ hours a day at my job. I want to be able to engage in other ways that I find interesting and valuable. And what a better way to find that tool, make those connections, right? We have Yammer that enables it as well. But of course, if it's governed in such a way that I'm only restricted to my areas where my blinders have been placed, I lack that ability to see other areas to grow organically within the business. And finally is a reliable source of truth, right? We can have a collaboration site, and if it's always in draft mode, how do I know my policy is up to date? Can I reliably trust that this template is what I need to be using right now if it's been updated yesterday, right? The internet has to be that source of truth, that layer that I can confidently go grab something I need and know that I can use it without breaking any policies or procedures set in place for me, right? So there's people, processes, and tools that I can rely on here in one foul swoop without having to go 20 different directions. And if I'm not aware of this particular community and I have not been joined, perhaps IT left me out, I've seen this happen before, I am none the wiser, right? So this is giving me a different mirror. This is a good designed internet, or a well-designed internet. If it's done poorly, it should be reconsidered in your business heavily.
I'd love to rebuttal a little bit there.
Yeah, absolutely. Go for it, Richard.
Yeah, so I think, a public and private isn't just the domain of the internet, right? So we can have good design where you have public spaces in communities and other spaces that are not internet centric and still have success. And I think that's the first thing, is that there's some design principles that are good design. What is a good public space? Should we design it? If we're doing an events community, should it be about events, or should it be about, EX debate, right? Which thing? Well, we know generally lots of things, that larger communities are more successful because most people consume in a community format. They don't contribute. So, I'm not preaching that we should all be collaborators and that we should expect everyone to contribute. That's not the reality. And in our designs should take into account how people work. And how people work today is that they don't really go to the internet unless they have to. And the question is that the right model as we move forward? So good design is about meeting user needs, right? User needs drives design, and the user needs today are, in the employee experience specifically, are about bringing way too much information in the organization to me in the context of my work. That's what good design is represented as. And so, I think my statement here is I don't disagree with some of the principles and practices that Brandon eloquently stated. I just think fundamentally, if we're talking about good design, we should design for the best experience where you are. So in mobile, there's 50 times a day in short sessions. That's an experience that's very different than most intranets are designed today, right? And a great example of that is how Viva Connections is brought into Teams. And so I can see my news and I can see all those things, but I'm already using Teams on my phone. I'm looking at those notifications for activity feed items I missed. The whole concept of activity feeds is rarely represented in the intranet. And that's where, honestly, most of us live when it comes to, that sort of core philosophy. So at the end of the day, I just think if you're designing for dying, you've designed for a place that you're bringing people towards. If you're designing for something thriving, if I can steal the internet thriving, I think you honestly do design for a distributed model, and you design for a better experience where the employee is. So my quick rebuttal there.
Perfect. I love that, focusing on the employee experience rather than the tool you're using. I love it. All right. So the last question before we dive into the lightning round is for Richard. Richard, Brandon has spoken to silos throughout the debate, and you're kind of talking about a more, how do I put this? Sorry. Can I get a little help on this question? Because it was just written, crisis, source of truth. Richard, get a hold of people. Is the internet the best way versus multi-channel? Is that essentially it?
Yeah.
That last bit?
Yeah. I hear what you're saying. Like, I think I hear what whoever's asking this question is. So, it's a fair statement, right? It's probably really hard actually for me to resolve this, because the internet is authority, right? I think that's a very fair statement. I think It's difficult for me to say like a site location and certain content isn't authoritative. I do think that there's other ways to establish authority, to be frank. And if we take like the source of the truth, we just had some crisis situations, right? We had the pandemic. We've had lots of situations like this where people need a place to go. But let me be clear. I do think fundamentally that the way people consume the information from those places to go is through multi-channel. So Teams, email, through basically a bunch of different mechanisms. In fact, during the pandemic, a lot of people consumed their information from their employers through apps, right? So they had like return to work apps, and they had experiences that were both to help automate different activities around returning to work and help people understand, the information they had all at a glance, all accessible. Why wasn't that often in the intranet? It often wasn't. It's because it's a better experience, again, for the end user. It's a better experience within that app. So I think there's definitely times where, the authoritative data may reside somewhere, but the way in which we communicate it should be multifaceted and contextual and based on whatever provides the best outcome. I also think that things like Q&A and other things like that, Q&A and Yammer is a great example of providing authority because you have marked as best answer, you have upvoting, you have lots of ways to do that. So I don't think it has to be just the intranet, right, that provides authority, direction, things like that. But I will concede that the intranet is generally the authority principle that we have within the organization. Now, again, I think fundamentally the problem with that is that when people are looking for that answer to things, they often don't have the time to go to the internet, comb through and find that authoritative resource. They want it to come to them in the context of what they're doing. So the reason the app example works so well is I'm coming into the office. I should have an easy, 1 or 2 click way of acknowledging, hey, I've entered this office. Or I'm coming to attend the office at this date. Here's my vaccine information, whatever else I need. So I think the better world is where we have both the internet and these, well-designed experiences that provide that authority information, but in a more consumable and easier to use way.
Perfect. And Brandon, how would you rebuttal that?
Well, I can, because to deny multi-channel would be deny the whole digital workplace, which then I guess we just call it a day and go home. But that's not why we're here, right? It is true. You do need multi-channel, right? The authority piece, again, undeniable, but it's again, the level at which the communication is being presented, right? We have communities, just like Reddit, where yes, this is the best answer, but that's based upon 2 variables. If someone had the time to do that, because let's just face it, I haven't seen a KPI yet where it's you must be a community monitor on top of being a manager. That's quite difficult and hard to follow up on from an HR perspective. But then there's also the ability that, what if someone's not comfortable with social, right? When Yammer came to the fore, the biggest question about, is this like Facebook? I don't know whether I'm comfortable engaging in this way. Well, that's fine. And that's another thing that needs to be factored in. We can use those tools, but it doesn't mean everyone's going to, right? So I'm reversing the same argument that Richard's presented. Yeah, employees may not go to the internet, but they also may not go everywhere else either. So multi-channel does fit, right? It does make sure that if it's keeping your business solvent, why wouldn't you do it, right? But at least you have the easy way to roll this out. Now, something like an app, okay, unless you're really cool, you're a citizen developer, like kudos to you guys out there, and you roll out a Power App really quickly and it takes you hours to do it, very few people still have those skills within organizations that can deploy, still have an approval from a business unit that governs your Microsoft 365 or your Intune devices to make that app available. Otherwise, your app is looking at, a couple tens of thousands of dollars. Whereas if you have something like an intranet, a site can be deployed within a matter of seconds. In fact, Microsoft made it available in their SharePoint lookbook, a crisis communication site that helped individual businesses deploy fast so they can get the message out, right? At the end of the day, if we're in crisis, I don't care where it is. I just need to know what to do, how to deliver or keep my family safe, and then go from there marginally, right? So this is a little bit of a nuanced debate. But I
think we both agree on
yeah,
exactly.
Right? So,
if there's a way to get more information, I think both Brendan and I are more information, more ways to get it, the better in a crisis. Yeah, 100%.
Right. But again, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Most companies had an intranet, so they utilized it. Yeah. I was with one of those companies that went through those motions, and when people want to check something, they will. So.
All right, great points across the board. It's funny that we found one that you kind of agree on, but let's move on now to the lightning round. We're going to speed things up a little bit, shorter answers, more to the point. And I will start with Brandon. So,
Sure.
is the intranet the key place for frontline workers to go, and should it be, or should it be, or should it be?
Very interesting question. And if you're looking at something from a theme perspective, I'm going to rally for the frontline workers. They've been all but cut off from an intranet from day one, which was because of access to information. They're on the go, right? Having a BYOD policy is still relatively new. I am upset that they haven't had that possibility up till now. Now, that being said, with Viva Connections, that's enabled more than ever, right? They're able to tap into the organization and not just be a desk worker. So yes, it should be. It could have been from the start, but of course, technology didn't allow for it. But going forward, I think that that's a massive part of our population. I think it's 80% of the world population is a frontline worker in some capacity of the existing workforce. That is large workforce, and I think that's a huge loss if they are not considered and designed for as a user persona overall.
Perfect. Great answer. We aren't doing rebuttals for lightning questions, right? So we're just going to get straight to the next question for Richard. Richard,
Looked like Richard had a good one for it too.
did you want to? Should we add rebuttals? Should we make a live decision?
No, you're probably
Okay.
you're probably right
All
for
right.
time. Otherwise, I'll be like, updates from bookings, all sorts of experiences. Microsoft,
Right.
I already did it.
This is the lightning round, so let's keep it going. All right. So for Richard, your question. When it comes to aligning employees across, different departments, different regions, how do you do that without something like an intranet in place? How do you do that without a central place like the intranet? Sorry.
That's a good one. That's a good one. So I think having a strategy and aligning to the visions is paramount, right? So corporate comms, that's a huge motion of corporate comms. So let me think about this in a different way. If I'm corporate comms today, obviously I use the internet. What other methods would maybe be more effective in creating alignment, and what are organizations doing to create alignment? So I'm going to pick on one of the Viva workloads here. Viva Goals, I think, is an extremely good example of an experience that's not intranet, that does a better job of aligning employees to goals, at least, and objectives, and that matters, to be honest, more to employees once it's rolled out. So what Viva Goals essentially provides is this way for you to establish goals and then break down those goals all the way down to the individual level. And the design of Viva Goals, or what we used to be AllIO, if you're more familiar with it before the acquisition by Microsoft, what it essentially provides is this experience where if I'm in Azure DevOps and I'm working on I'm in Azure DevOps and I'm working on like an object or a backlog item, I can actually see how that might correlate all the way back up to like the vision and objectives of the organization. So, in Tutorlead, one of our objectives is to prove to the world that there's a better way to do generous consulting. And so if I kind of break that down at this level, I might know that, okay, this particular thing that I'm checking in and I'm finishing my work and worked quite hard on, that's important because we hope to make it a case study and we think it's a differentiated experience, and we want to highlight that differentiated experience and correlate it to the fact that we as a company stand for these things, and so on and so forth. So that sort of breakdown all the way down to the lower level of that objective is what Viva Goals does really well, and it provides that experience in the places I work. So in Azure DevOps, like I mentioned, in Teams, in Outlook, in these experiences where we already work and live, not in the intranet. Now, does that mean that there will be someday a component, the little Viva dashboard card or something for goals in the intranet? Sure. But again, the intranet isn't where we go and experience and work on goals and things like that. That's, within our core experience. So I think there's lots of examples. I don't think Viva Goals is alone. There's lots of these examples where the way we work, on creating alignment, working at it, I think that's something that's more naturally fit throughout, the work experience, not just, in corporate messaging.
Perfect. Great response. I could just see the thought bubbles of Brandon's head talking about silos, but we'll move on from there and we'll go on to the next question. How does this one's for Brandon, of course. How does the internet simplify access and experience?
Oh my goodness, how doesn't it? For the sake of the conversation, can you break that down even further?
Yeah, exactly. So versus what Richard's talking about, different experiences, creating different experiences that speak more to the employee experience and creating a better employee experience than just an intranet experience. How does the internet simplify access and experience? I said
Well, of
experience a million
course.
times. I apologize, but hopefully the point came through.
Well, as a given that Richard's my manager and everything, I'm going to have to go a little softer. But yeah,
No.
no, the employee experience here in the internet is undeniable, right? So we have personalization, which unfortunately, love Viva, but goals, yes, it can provide a means to an end, but you have no curation and customization of how you want it to look and fit. The internet, on the other side, is even when it started, back in the Stone Ages, I probably wasn't even alive, but it was a list of, hey, this is the tools that we have available. Hey, this is the kind of information that you will need to do your job effectively on a day-to-day basis. And that was probably Lotus Notes years. Like I'm talking about forever ago. But it's gotten better over the years to curate based upon who you are within an Active Directory dynamic group, for example. It's able to cross-cut for multiple levels if it's designed properly, where leadership has a layer, management has a layer, frontline has a layer now too, right? So you have different personas you can curate for an experience. So it's not just a one-size-fits-all model, although I've talked about previously that there's a public and a private space. The internet has become, much more malleable to fit everyday needs. And that spans everything from not just the 365 stack, but you're bringing in additional things. So my favorite IT front desk support workers now with ServiceNow, they live and work in ServiceNow, but they're able to still pull in through integrations and still get the work done, right? So there's so much that can be done. It's really the limit is your imagination, right? Going through a maturity model, looking at out of the box, perhaps custom community models, and then custom development in general, you have a wide gambit of ability. The only limitation is your research and your business intelligence to be able to curate and foster that kind of environment for you. And again, did I say that it's fully customizable? Yeah. It's really great, a really great tool. So, I'm not passionate about this at all.
I think my favorite part of the lightning round so far is just watching whoever's on the sidelines like edging on their seat, like I just want to. But great answers for all the questions. Thank you very much. Thanks so much. Now, moving on to Richard. Wellness and employee health should have always been, but is of growing importance to organizations today. So, if you're not going to leverage the intranet to house and to make sure that it is improving for your organization, where would you house that?
Yeah, great question. And by the way, I'm super excited to see the comments and people's opinions on the sidebar as they champion, their perspective. I think wellness is definitely a big focus. It's not a new one, but it's come in the spotlight, right? Since the post-pandemic era and the really significant challenge of finding and retaining workplace talent. So, I think collaboration has a big part to play on that. Delay send on a message is a big deal. Like sending a Teams message is quite disruptive late at night. Sending an email late at night. Those are things that, the delay send features that Microsoft has built in are really helpful. Some of them require us to understand them, turn them on, etc. So it's really important for us to embrace those things. And I would say collaboration has a big first starting point of reference there, since collaboration is at the core of it. I think management's probably secondary, if not for some people probably number one, and that's like inclusive meetings. So a big problem today is when you have managers who have remote or mostly remote employees and hybrid employees, how do you create a employee experience that is going to make sure that you're being inclusive to all those parties as a manager? Or do people have enough time with their managers? A lot of things that we experience is because we don't have the support we need. We don't need to have the proactive time with the manager, those types of things. So I think, fundamentally, there's tons of manager experience elements and how we do that. That's really important. Collaboration earlier being like even the way we conduct meetings, could that be better? Since meetings are such a cornerstone of how we work and often work after hours, unfortunately. And then comms, I think, does have a part to play here, right? What policies do we have? There's this wonderful lookbook.microsoft.com. Since Brandon brought up one earlier, I'm allowed to, right? There's a wonderful lookbook.microsoft.com experience around workplace transformation. It's a site to help with hybrid workplace transformation, which is great for even people who've been in the organization for a long time. So, I think it has, again, comms and sites have a part to play here, but, Q&A, tying that together, integrating the experience, with Viva Insights. All of Viva Insights basically fits into this discussion. There's a lot of other things that have a huge impact. I think the intranet as a place to go, probably not that important. More these collaboration, engaging sites like Workplace Transformation. I think spaces like that might be compelling, but the core intranet, like the homepage, is not where people go for wellness, in my opinion.
So getting more proactive rather than having the intranet be more of a reactive tool. Excellent. Great. So we've gone through opening statements, we've gone through questions, lightning rounds. Now it is time to put this debate to rest with our closing statements. Richard, why don't you take the floor and begin?
Oh, yeah, I can go first. Okay, so it's true today that we're in the middle of yet another change. At one point in time, we would have debated whether, commenting, amplifying, reacting to content, right? If that was something we should empower in intranets. We collectively called that moment in time Enterprise 2.0. And I think today we're experiencing a very similar and significant moment of change, right, within the industry. Today, we have the intranet as a destination. And the question is the intranet as a destination, the right model as we move forward? Is that something that we want to continue to emphasize and empower? Or do we want to shift away from how do we bring people to the intranet, and instead, how do we bring the intranet to people where they are? And this experience matters more than ever today. Today, for people to be more productive, we need to ask them to do more. And unfortunately, it's a really difficult situation to do more today with all of the challenges we have, with recession challenges, with the Great Resignation, reshuffling. Those types of things are impacting people. There's not enough people to do the work that we need to get done. And now you're asking, hey, go to this place if you need that information. Go do this thing instead of it coming to you. And I think fundamentally that's a big ask to keep pushing in today's day and age. And if we work the other way, if everything's contextual, if it's predictively recommending content to us, if it's helping us within that framing, that makes us able to do more with less. It makes our lives and our experiences as an employee easier and better. And I think that that's something that today, the historical model of going to the intranet doesn't do a good job of. Intranet teams and corporate comms professionals who focus on the role of supporting and stewarding better future-proofed and favorable experiences are those that are both professionally and financially more successful. And those are the ones that focus on connecting, integrating, and enriching that experience, not on, creating a nicer looking homepage or something of that nature. So if you believe the intranet as a place to go is dying, even if it's a really long, slow death drawn out, I get it, then let's encourage a better employee experience faster by voting with me for the motion and acknowledging that this could be better, that what is going to replace this is something that we all want more, that this next, major revolution of the intranet lands with a better experience than what we have today, and let's support that revolution into something that is more integrated, connected, and a better experience.
Amazing. Great way to tie the bow on your side of the discussion today. Brandon, time for your closing statement.
Thank you. It's been a really good debate so far. And I think, as I had predicted at the beginning of my opening statement, was that my opponent was going to bring up that there are many other applications. But I have not yet seen or heard of proof that these applications will make the lives of individuals easier. Yes, enriched. But I do not believe that is an indication of a dying internet. I think, as he might have just said, is we're going through perhaps a 3.0, that the internet as we know it may be slightly different, but we could have said that about 1.0 going into 2.0, right? It's going from an Encyclopedia Britannica into something more in our pocket, right? We are going through the ebbs and flows, the motions, but the content, the need to be able to do our work remains the same, right? We need a marching beat, we need a culture amplifier, and now we're going into the foray of employee experience, employee health, engagement, really metrics that up to date either have been very impossible to prove or we didn't have the tools to be able to break down that big data. So what I'm here saying is that, yes, I think in a roundabout way, Richard has been agreeing with me the whole time. I think that really what we're trying to say is that the internet is evolving. It's not dying. And hopefully not a very slow and declining death. That would put me out of work real quick. But it is a digital workplace evolution. I think that there is a lot of interlacing of the internet that's able to facilitate and reach out and branch out to provide an experience. Do I think that this is going to change in the next decade? No. I think that this is going to live symbiotically together while we try to figure out what the best path forward is. If an employee is always given the information, you're taking away their autonomy to create organic and new experiences on their own. You're taking the discoverability away by saying a machine is saying this is how you should learn this content. It's taking that human element away, and I don't think there's a big justification yet to say why we need to remove that element. Two of them could live together, but truly, I don't think that's going to crash and burn anytime soon. So to repeat, these options, Teams and Viva and otherwise, are still too immature, right? They have very, very great promise, and I use them on a daily basis, but it's still not quite there. They silo our employees, kind of, keeping those blinders on, which I don't think is very productive in the long term, maybe for the immediate and near future because of the current global events, but not so much. And I also believe they're fragmented and under customizable. So I simply believe they're not quite there yet, although we are starting to see some amazing returns in this area. The internet has been here for quite some time. It produces and provides us a way to see a lens through the organization beyond ourselves. And I think that's something that for the large part, communications teams, and now my favorite new term, my content or knowledge managers are coming to the fore. It's really starting to get that much better. So thank you for your time.
Amazing. Thank you, both of you. That was absolutely amazing. I know we can speak about this and debate about this for days and days, but unfortunately, this is the end of our first episode of the Great EX Debate. Thank you so much to our debaters, and thank you so much to all of you viewing.
Just as a reminder too, we do have a second vote for everyone to participate in. So if you voted on the first time, this is your opportunity to vote the second time, and then Brandon or I will find out. There's two votes. There's the live one you guys have access to, and then there's a vote that'll be kind of online that anyone can participate in after the fact or even during this, and with a bigger sample size. So even if I don't win this one, I hope to win that one. But yeah, please don't forget to vote. And sorry, I totally interrupted you, Eddy. Go ahead.
All good, all good. That was the next line I was about to say, but it's all good. So don't forget to vote Intranet dying or Intranet thriving with the new poll that should be in the chat at this moment. So please click on that and get that done. Also, just a slight little, I am a director of marketing, so little CTA at the end here. If you're looking for some incredible ideas on how to improve employee experience in your digital workplace using Microsoft 365, please check out our 40 employee experience ideas book. And you can get that at m365ideas.com. Thank you, everybody, and have yourself a great afternoon. Or did you want to say something else, Richard?
Yeah, I was just going to say, thank you, Brandon. That was awesome. Yeah. And I'm looking forward to, there's a couple questions that looked kind of cool that came in. I like this one around who's who. So maybe we do that one as a follow-up, kind of teasing, a follow-up besides the idea book. If you guys want to, or if you're interested in more of this, let us know. And we will do a little article or something like that and give our perspectives on some of these other questions you guys have shared.
Amazing. And now, Brandon, would you like to say anything before we end this live?
Nope. I think I've said more than enough today. I need some content for next time, so I'm just gonna bow out now.
All right. So on that note, thank you once again to the debaters, and thank all of you for tuning in and watching. Until the next Great EX.